Srimad Bhagavatam once again. I guess you can tell I'm a Srimad Bhagavatam fan. We're continuing from yesterday evening with a very beautiful section of the beautiful Bhagavatam. Krishna just turned 6. The pastime of Brahma Vimohan Lila, Krishna's dealing with Brahma after he stole the calves and the cowherd boys and showing his unlimited opulences. Brahma being overwhelmed and offering profound prayers. Brahma circumambulated Krishna and departed. And the cowherd boys went back at the end of their having lunch and told everybody about the events of the day, which happened 1 year previously, as if it had happened that day, because 1 year had passed, etc. That nice description. And that marked the end of his 5th year, and in the 6th year he graduated from taking care of the calves to taking care of the cows. He and Balaram are being described as being slightly older in their chest and their arms and their strength and their playfulness and kind of mischievousness as well. And so we just heard yesterday the description, really beautiful description, of what happened when Krishna entered the forest the next day, when he's been now given care of the cows. It's a festival. He's playing on his flute to inform all the inhabitants of the forest, the cows, but all the inhabitants of the forest. He's coming, and they're joyful, and the earth is being marked by his feet, and flowers are abundant, and bees are buzzing, and birds are singing, and Krishna's enjoying each of his senses, and he's enjoying the company of the cowherd boys. Text 4, 10:15:4. The primeval Lord saw that the stately trees with their beautiful reddish buds and their heavy burden of fruits and flowers were bending down to touch his feet with the tips of their branches. Thus he smiled gently and addressed his elder brother. Purport. BBT purport. The words Muda Smayan Eva Muda Smayan Eva indicate that Lord Krishna was in a joking mood. He knew that the trees were actually bowing down to worship him, but in the following verse, the Lord, speaking in a friendly, light-hearted mood, gives the credit to his brother Balaram. Vishwanath Chakravarti, Thakur. Seeing all the trees bending down with reddish shoots, fruits, and flowers to touch his feet, Krishna smiled. Seeing himself glorified by the trees, it was improper for him to speak of his own glorification when he praised the trees. Therefore he smiled in great bliss, and unable to remain silent, he began to speak, giving his glorification to Balaram. Thus he addresses Balaram as Adi Purusha in verse 6. He appeared to smile, or almost smile, Hasan Eva, in order to hide his intentions from Balaram. Bhagavatamrita says, that's a book by Sanatan Goswami, When the sweetness of Vrindavan and its inhabitants became strong in the mind of Krishna, and he began praising them, through which he himself receives praise, he did so by using Balaram as the object of praise. However, the verses do not actually depict Balaram's glories. Out of Sakya Bhav, Krishna speaks his own glories in a joking way in the name of Balaram. Friendship, loving friendship. Though Krishna is the younger brother of Balaram, in this verse Krishna is addressed as Adipurusha to denote his position as Swayam Bhagavan. Jiva Goswami's makes further reference to Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Okay. Jiva Goswami writes, he saw everywhere, tatra, the trees with branches touching his feet, heavy with flowers and fruit, with a wealth of red shoots. He saw the trees with branches touching his feet because of being heavy with flowers and fruit. This was the best of forests because it had huge trees, vana patin. According to Amar Kosh dictionary, the word vanaspati means a tree which bears fruits without flowers, and vanaspati means a tree which bears fruits without flowers. That's the same sentence. The word vanaspati does not refer to all the trees. However, the rule of inclusion by similar form, this word can include. Anyway, his smile indicated a joking mood, which indicated in verse 7 through 9, in which his words stimulate his fickle mood, playing with boys his own age, and identifying with them with predominance of balya feelings. In his Sakya mood, he puts relationship with his elder brother in a secondary role. This is indicated by the word iva. The two moods as brother or friend will sometimes appear in either of them. Now, it's said about his childhood pastimes. Now he's entered into another age. In his childhood pastimes, the relationship between the two was equal. And as they both get older, it transforms a bit from equal to the elder brother, younger brother role. It's a detail, but they're because Krishna's the best of all enjoyers. There's different moods of enjoyment, and his first expansion is Balaram, and so it undergoes some transformation over time. Equal, then superior, junior, but Krishna really likes his friends. That's what Jiva Goswami is saying. From text 14 of this chapter 15, quote, when his elder brother, fatigued from play, would lie down with his head upon the lap of a cowherd boy, Krishna would help him relax by personally massaging his feet and offering other services. Paragraph. Since Krishna regards him as his elder brother, if there is joking, it is done in the form of praise. Quote, if that is so, why does Balaram not joke with Krishna, since he is superior? Unquote. Answer. Krishna is Adipurusha. He is superior in qualities and is Purusha. Thus, Krishna praises him as if singing, with joking verse. Out of a joyful heart, with many enjoyments, he first decided to enjoy this one pastime. Because the Lord produces this joking, it also proves to be true. Sanatana Goswami. He saw everywhere, tatra, the huge trees, vanaspatim, with branches touching his feet, heavy with flowers and fruit, with a wealth, or shri, of red shoots. Because of the weight of the branches touching his feet, he smiled and spoke. The branches touched his feet with devotion. The leaves are not mentioned, since they were not so excellent as the fruit and flowers. He smiled because that was natural to him. He smiled because spontaneously he would speak descriptions to Balaram. Krishna is called Adipurush because it was suitable for him to speak to Balaram, who had appeared as his elder brother for some special pastimes. Since the previous verse mentioned that Krishna had developed the urge to enjoy, he would now perform one pastime to give joy to the heart. Since he is the highest person, Adipurusha, all types of sweetness and pastimes and respect for Balaram to teach the people were suitable for him to perform. Here is the principle. Pleased with the trees, since they bowed to him, he desired to benedict them, but was shy because of his possession of good qualities. Using the pretext of respecting his elder brother, he described the tree's service attitude. He showed special mercy to the inhabitants of the forest on first entering there by description of the forest's qualities. So remember from yesterday evening, we heard the qualities in the forest as Krishna is entering. So they're jubilant. And in their jubilance, they're worshiping Krishna. So Krishna is now going to reciprocate with their worship and their joyfulness. And in Kramasandarbha, Jiva Goswami writes, Krishna's smile indicated his joking mood, as in verse 7 with, quote, these doe are pleasing you with affectionate glances just as the gopis do, unquote. He promoted fickle playing, as in verse 9. There's a series of verses that are coming up that are just appreciating what the forest. He was absorbed in playing at all times with his friends out of a portion of Sakyabhav. His joking in the form of praise was suitable to his being Bhagavan. The next verse, that was 4. Here's 5. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O greatest of lords, just see how these trees are bowing their heads at your lotus feet, which are worshipable by the immortal demigods. The trees are offering you their fruits and flowers to eradicate the dark ignorance that has caused their birth as trees. BBT purport. The trees of Vrindavan were thinking that because of past offenses, they had now taken birth as trees, and, being immovable, could not accompany Lord Krishna in his wanderings throughout the Vrindavan area. In fact, all the creatures of Vrindavan, including the trees and cows, were great souls who could personally associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because of ecstatic sentiments of separation, the trees considered themselves in ignorance, and thus tried to purify themselves by bowing down at the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram. Lord Krishna, understanding their mentality, simultaneously glanced at them with affection and praised their devotional service before his older brother Balaram. Nice. And so now our Acharya's commentaries. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, knowing the minds of the trees who wanted to worship his own lotus feet, Krishna, glancing at the trees, spoke to Balaram about their glories as great devotees. Quote, holding on their heads gifts of fruits and flowers, they are bowing down to your lotus feet with devotion. Why? They bow to purify themselves of offenses, which have caused them to take birth as trees, unquote. And they respond, because we have committed such great offenses, we have become trees and cannot approach Krishna. Krishna in this way interprets the trees' words, stemming from their attraction to Krishna. However, since Brahma prayed to be born as a tree in Braja, the trees there could not have been born as a result of offenses. That was Vishwanath. Jiva Goswami. Aho indicates joy or astonishment. Oh, best of the devatas. Although they are trees, taking presentations of flowers and fruits in the tips of their branches or on their heads, as worthy offerings, they bow to your lotus feet, which are worshipped by Brahma and liberated souls. How can these trees have consciousness? They have taken birth as trees in Vrindavan in order to destroy darkness of those who see or hear about this incident. That's Jiva Goswami. Or, taking birth as trees, they destroy the suffering caused by attachment to your association and now being separated by bowing down. They would refer to Nitya Siddhas. That's our morning discussion. For sadhana siddhas, they take birth as trees to destroy their suffering of not having attained you yet, as in the prayers of Brahma. Krishna desired to wander freely everywhere to give happiness to all. And Sanatana Goswami always has something interesting to say, a little different than the others. Aho indicates joy or astonishment, O best of the devatas. This line of this is similar. Jiva Goswami is following. By using the word samanaha, or good-natured, it is suggested that the plants have feelings of love. They are worshipped by the devatas, having a predominance of sattva. They have taken birth as trees in order to remove ignorance. The trees are worshipped by those having no death, amara, the best of the devatas, like Brahma. Even those who are liberated are ignorant, since they are deprived of prema when they merge in Brahman. Thus they also worship the trees, which have the opportunity for service to Krishna. Using their branches as their heads, the trees bring offerings with devotion to the world. They have taken birth as trees to remove ignorance, their bad karma. This is a prayer so that all the plants can be liberated from their ignorant condition. The plants cannot approach you like the animals and birds, which are mobile. They bow down with their branches to remove their lamentable condition, tamas. You gave them birth as trees. Therefore, they should always have your association. Now I have things ending at that point, but I think we should go on a little bit further. Yeah, yeah. Still the same text. In Krama Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami writes, the extraordinary nature of the Lord's abode in this world during his manifest pastimes is also described in the following verse spoken by Lord Krishna to Baladev. That's this one. My dear brother, you are superior to all of us, and your lotus feet are worshipped by the demigods. Just see how these trees, their branches full of fruits, and samana flowers have bent down to worship your lotus feet. It appears they are trying to get out of the darkness of being obliged to accept the form of trees. It further appears they have accepted the form of trees in order to offer everything to you, so that those who see them or hear of their exemplary devotional service may become purified of the darkness of material life. And there's another section here. Jiva Goswami in Priti Sandarbha. There's, for those of you that are not familiar, Jiva Goswami was one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. He was very young compared to the others. He is the nephew of Rupa and Sanatan. Means Rupa and Sanatan had a brother, and he's the son of their brother, the nephew. And Jiva Goswami, studied under Rupa Goswami. He studied all the writings of the Goswamis and everything, the Bhagavatam, everything. So he was perfectly trained by Rupa Goswami. And he was incredibly scholarly. So he wrote, one could say 4, but for sure he wrote 3 different commentaries on the Bhagavatam. One was a verse-by-verse commentary on the Bhagavatam, something similar to what Prabhupada did. The entire 12 cantos. Then a separate commentary was just much more focused on the 10th canto, entire commentary on the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, separate. And a third commentary was topic by topic, divided into 6 sandarbhas. So the final of the 6 was the fruit of devotional service. The first 4 have names, but they're under the category of Sambandha, teaching knowledge of everything in relation to the source of everything, in different categories, ending with Krishna Sandarbha. And that's the 4th of the 6. And then the 5th is the next topic, that's the means of acting in one's relationship with the source of everything. That's devotional service. So Bhakti Sandarbha. That's Sandarbha number 5. And Sandarbha number 6 of the 6 is Priti Sandarbha. The fruit of acting in that relationship in loving service is, we normally say, in ISKCON we're accustomed to saying prema, and Jiva Goswami liked the word priti. He calls it Priti Sandarbha. So this is a reference in Priti Sandarbha to this evening's verse. It starts, he's describing a term in love, a loving exchange, called udipan. Udipan means stimulations of love. Like, for example, Krishna's flute. The sound of Krishna's flute is a stimulation for ecstatic love. The smile of Krishna, the glancing of Krishna, the walking of Krishna, the laughter of Krishna, just like we heard, his gentle smile It's a stimulation of ecstatic love. So, among those Udipan has been described in this Priti Sandarbha in general. Now he's going to speak about the Udipans, or the stimulations of ecstatic love of Krishna in Vrindavan, is very special. There resides the objects most treasured by Krishna, who is the object of the highest priti. He gives examples. Oh, King Parikshit, when Rama and Krishna saw Vrindavan, Govardhan, and the banks of the river Jamuna, they both enjoyed great pleasure. This is a verse after Krishna's earliest childhood, from up to 3 years, 4 months, Krishna lived with Nanda and Yasoda on the eastern side of the river Jamuna in Gokula. But there are too many demons, so the elders got together and said, let's go to the other side of the river Jamuna, to Vrindavan, from Gokula. Plus there's very nice, there's fresh grazing area for other cows, and it's a better arrangement. So everyone agreed. They shifted. They crossed the river Jamuna. And when Krishna and Balaram reached the western side of the river Jamuna, I like this verse. Then when we sing the Jai Radha Madhava song, Jamuna Tira Vanachari, it's just that's this verse. It doesn't say Govardhan Hill in that particular stanza, but it speaks of it earlier, Giri Vadadari. So when Krishna went to Vrindavan, he was really, really happy, Krishna and Balaram, because there were these three things: the forest of Vrindavan, the banks of the river Jamuna, and Govardhan Hill. So they're especially stimulated Krishna. That's the point. Krishna himself praises the place. That's this verse for this evening. Oh, greatest of lords, just see how these trees are bowing their heads at your lotus feet, which are worshipable by the devatas, by offering you their fruits and flowers. Having taken birth as trees to eradicate the dark ignorance of others by their actions. So Krishna praises Vrindavan, then the great devotees praise Vrindavan. This is Brahma in his prayers to Krishna of the previous chapter 14. My greatest possible good fortune would be to take birth of any kind, whatever, in this forest of Gokula, and have my head bathed by the dust falling from the lotus feet of any of its residents. Their entire life and soul is the Lord Mukunda, the dust of whose lotus feet is sought even today by the Upanishads. So that's Brahma praising Vrindavan, and here's Uddhava praising Vrindavan. Uddhava was sent by Krishna from Mathura to carry a message for him to the gopis. And when he experiences Vrindavan, here's what he says. The gopis of Vrindavan have given up the association of their husbands, sons, and other family members who are very difficult to give up, and they have forsaken their relatives and the path of Dharma to obtain the lotus feet of Mukunda Krishna, which even the Vedas pursue. Oh, let me be fortunate enough to be one of the bushes, creepers, or herbs in Vrindavan, because the gopis bless them with the dust of their lotus feet. And then in chapter 21, oh, friend, Vrindavan is spreading the glory of the earth, having obtained the treasure of the lotus feet of Krishna, the son of Devaki, with peacocks dancing madly when they hear Govinda's flute, with all other creatures remaining stunned on the top of hills as they watch the dance. The pastimes that Krishna performed there are the highest. In relation to the 18-syllable mantra, a certain portion of the Vedas, Vedic text says, the thousands of avatars of Krishna are all auspicious. Among them, the young boy is the rarest. Krishna's childhood pastimes are unique amongst the various avatars. The other avatars don't have these celebrated childhood pastimes like Krishna in Vrindavan. And I'm skipping some other sections. We'll just go to the really nice discussion about the Udipan, the stimulations of ecstatic love. Again, this is Priti Sandarbha. Jiva Goswami is relishing, describing the different types of love that Krishna stimulates. In the 11th canto, at the end of the narrations about Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna in general act as udipans, stimulations for ecstatic love, for bhakti, but the pastimes of its childhood are singled out as most excellent. From 11th canto, chapter 31. This is still Uddhava Gita, the latter parts of Uddhava Gita. The auspicious exploits of the attractive incarnations of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, and also the pastimes he performed as a child in Vrindavan, are described in this Srimad Bhagavatam and in other scriptures. This isn't Krishna speaking. Anyone who clearly chants these descriptions of his pastimes will attain supreme bhakti to Lord Krishna, who is the goal of perfect sages. The excellence of Krishna's manifested pastimes in Vrindavan are of many types. Some show excellence of Aishwarya, opulence or majesty. For example, Krishna showing Brahma that he is the Lord of millions of universes, and the form of rasa, of eternity, knowledge, and infinite bliss. Some of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan show his compassion. For example, Krishna giving Putana the position of a nurse. Some show Krishna's sweetness, and it gives many examples. From chapter 8, this is childhood for Krishna. When Krishna and Balaram, with the strength of their legs, crawled about zigzag in the muddy places of Braja, the sound of their ankle bells was very charming. Pleased by the sound of other people's ankle bells, they used to follow these people, but when they saw that these were other people, meaning not their parents, they became afraid and returned to their real mothers. That's chapter 8, text 22. Here's chapter 8, text 29. The elder gopis go to speak with Mother Jasoda about his stealing. Your son sometimes comes to our houses before milking of the cows and releases the calves. And when the master of the house becomes angry, your son merely smiles. Sometimes he devises some process by which he steals palatable curd, butter, and milk, which he then eats and drinks. When the monkeys assemble, he divides it with them. And when the monkeys have their bellies so full that they won't take more, he breaks the pots. Sometimes, if he gets no opportunity to steal butter or milk from the house, he will get angry at the householders and will make the small children cry and make them run away, and then run away. He says he pinch them, the sleeping children, then run away. They cry and runs away. Chapter 11 of Canto 10. Praised by the elder gopis, the Lord, like a puppet on strings, sometimes danced like other boys. Sometimes he sang, and sometimes he acted ignorantly. Same chapter. Sometimes Krishna and Balaram would play on their flutes. Sometimes they would throw bilva fruits using slings. Sometimes they danced, making their ankle bells tinkle. Chapter 12. "O king, one day Krishna decided to take his breakfast as a picnic in the forest. Having risen up early in the morning, he blew his horn and woke up the cowherd boys and calves with its beautiful sound. Then Krishna and the boys, keeping their respective groups of calves before them, proceeded from Braja to the forest." Chapter 15, later in this chapter. In the company of Balaram, Krishna, whose pastimes are praised, sang along with his followers when the highly intoxicated bees began humming. Same chapter. Krishna's hair, covered with the dust raised by the cows, was decorated with a peacock feather and forest flowers. He glanced charmingly and smiled beautifully, playing upon his flute, while his companions chanted his glories. The young gopis all together came forward to meet him, their eyes very eager to see him. Going back to chapter 8. As Krishna danced, some of the boys accompanied him by singing, and others by playing flutes, hand cymbals, buffalo horns, while still others praised his dancing. Chapter 20. The cows had to move slowly because of their weighty milk bags, but they quickly ran to the Lord as soon as he called them, their affection for him causing their udders to become wet. Chapter 21. "O friends, we do not know any other success for those with eyes than the face of the younger one who plays the flute. The face experienced as he casts a side glance of love. The face tasted by people with eyes, as the two sons of Nanda take the cows from forest to forest along with their friends." This is Priti Sandarbha, showing the varieties of stimulations of love. This is emphasis on sweetness. His complexion, this is chapter 23. His complexion was dark blue. These are hearing these are meant by the speaker, Sukadev, to stimulate ecstatic love for Krishna. So I hope that's happening. His complexion was dark blue, and his belt was golden. Wearing a peacock feather, colored minerals, sprigs of flower buds, and a garland of forest flowers and leaves, he was dressed just like a dramatic dancer. He rested his left hand upon the shoulder of a friend, and with the other twirled a lotus. Lilies graced his ears, his hair hung down over his cheeks, and his lotus-like face was smiling. Very beautiful. Chapter 29. This is the beginning of the Rasa Lila section. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, upon seeing those autumn nights scented with blossoming jasmine flowers, taking shelter of his Yogamaya, decided to fulfill the desires of the gopis. And towards the end of that section, chapter 35, when Mukunda vibrates the flute he has placed to his lips, stopping its holes with his tender fingers, he rests his left cheek on his left arm and makes his eyebrows dance. At that time, the demigoddesses traveling in the sky with their husbands become amazed. As those ladies listen, they are embarrassed to find their minds yielding to the pursuit of desire, and in their distress they are unaware that the belts of their garments are loosening. What more can be said? All this is understood in all the verses by devotional persons. So that's just a sample. I extracted sections from a much larger section of this Priti Sandarbha. Will continue tomorrow. So all of these references They're within the Bhagavatam itself, and the Bhagavatam itself is teaching these different principles. Like I said, Bhagavat Sandarbha is a commentary on the Bhagavatam. So it's teaching the first is Tattva Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, Bhagavat Sandarbha, and Krishna Sandarbha. And all of those truths are from the Bhagavatam. So there's different categories of truths about Krishna that the Bhagavatam reveals, and this Priti Sandarbha is one of those truths about Krishna, that he stimulates love. And hearing about Krishna, the pastimes are to stimulate two things. He is enjoying, and he's bringing enjoyment to others, and he enjoys bringing enjoyment to others. He's enjoying, so like entering into the forest and seeing the trees, just for example. He's appreciating, and he's stimulating their love by his appreciating. And many other things. He's teaching, they're teaching how no matter what your condition is, you can overcome your condition by the mood of loving service to Krishna. And Krishna is very pleased, and Krishna will reciprocate and stimulate the love of those who serve him in that way. So the trees are teaching, the trees are enjoying, Krishna's enjoying their service, Krishna stimulating their love, and all these things are part of what the Bhagavatam is narrating. Now, one can just read it as a story, which is fine. At the same time, embedded within the story are stimulations of ecstatic love. And those who become elevated in bhakti to the stage of prema bhakti, then they can experience those kinds of happiness that are described just by hearing the narrations. So, in other words, saying the same thing in other words, Krishna is not going to appear again until the next day of Brahma. And so we have a long wait to experience Krishna's pastimes, at least on this earth planet. However, the pastimes are performed in such a way that by narrating the pastimes, one can experience Krishna's presence. Then that's a fact. It's the beauty of the Bhagavatam, and it's literally a fact. There's something that I'm going to say in further, describe in further detail during this coming weekend, the festival, the Holy Name Weekend, has to do with a pastime, a glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam that's found in Padma Purana. We're going to have a little offering of Srimad Bhagavatam this evening, so I'll speak something just on the glories of the Bhagavatam. One of the Puranas that's very much celebrated is Padma Purana. And there's a whole section in Padma Purana called Bhagavat Mahatmya. There's a certain section of the Padma Purana. So in that Bhagavat Mahatmya section of Padma Purana, the following description is there. After Krishna departed, well, before Krishna departed, he gave an instruction to his chariot driver. Chariot driver's name was Dhenuka. And he told Dhenuka, go back immediately. I'm going to depart. Go back immediately to Dwarka and inform the residents of Dwarka that the city of Dwarka is going to submerge in the ocean in 7 days. So they should vacate Dwarka. The pastimes are over. So Dhenuka went back and informed them, you have to leave. So his 16,000 queens were in Dwarka. But so was Arjuna in Dwarka. So Arjuna was entrusted with the service of escorting the queens all the way back from Dwarka to Hastinapur for protection. You with me? It's in the first canto, the description. Arjun says to Yudhisthira, I was able to defeat everybody in the Kurukshetra battle, but I couldn't even protect the queens going from Dwarka back to Hastinapur from some band of cowherd boys. That mightiness that was invested in me by Krishna was taken away. My mightiness is Krishna's mightiness. So when they reached Hastinapur, there's a new king. The new king, after Krishna's departure, was who? Who was the king after Yudhisthira? Maharaj Parikshit. He was king. So Maharaj Parikshit sent the queens to be in the care of Krishna's great-grandson, who was put in charge of Mathura. So the queens went to stay in Mathura. And the queens were in great distress over separation from Krishna, except for one of them, Kalindi. So they asked Kalindi, how come you're not disturbed? And we're all disturbed. And she then, this is in Padma Purana, she narrated the very means of remaining undisturbed is remembering what was heard from Uddhava. So Uddhava described the glories of Krishna. And if you could somehow get Uddhava's association, then you would also become undisturbed. But unfortunately, Uddhava's left this world. When Krishna left, Uddhava left. But he desired very much to become a blade of grass in Vrindavan. So all we need to do is hear from Uddhava and we'll be pacified. So it was decided, let's go. So Bhadranabh went with them to Vrindavan. And they went to the very place where Uddhava made this statement, which is at Uddhava Kund, by the side of Govardhan Hill. So when you go to Vrindavan and you circumambulate around Govardhan Hill, one of the places that you'll visit is Uddhava Kund. So they went to Uddhava Kund and they had a fantastic kirtan, singing Krishna's name, just spontaneously. And the kirtan was so ecstatic that Uddhava manifested himself from the grass and the bushes, and he started dancing with them. And when they saw Uddhava come out of the bushes and the grass, they were overwhelmed because they knew what that meant. And according to Padma Purana, Bhagavad Mahatmya section, Uddhava said, I understand that you're very unhappy. The way that you can become freed from unhappiness is if you hear of Krishna's pastimes. So if I'll narrate Krishna's pastimes to you. So Uddhava narrates Krishna's pastimes to the queens, and one by one, just by hearing Krishna's pastimes, they return to the spiritual world. Very nice. That's in Padma Purana. Now, we heard 2 evenings ago about Krishna sending the residents of Vrindavan back to the spiritual world. Then yesterday we heard Krishna sending the residents of Dwarka back to the spiritual world, but there's the queens. They were sent back to the spiritual world by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Uddhava. So, read Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of elevated devotees, and fasten your seatbelt. Get ready for the journey to the spiritual world, because the potency for achieving that is there. And that's what we've been doing, hearing the verses and the commentaries of Srimad Bhagavatam from our acharyas. Let's see if there's some discussion. 7:30.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So it's always very nice to hear this, especially 10th canto Bhagavatam. It's it's nice to hear it, pleasing to the ears and satisfied to the minds. So my question is, so every time whenever I hear, especially the narration of 10th canto and all other Bhagavatam chapters also, I feel like this is the first time I'm hearing it, and I feel fresh and enjoying the experiences. So why is that? Like, even though I hear like a lot of times, but
You think it's bad?
no, I'm enjoying. Like, this is the first time. Even though I heard it like
Okay, so
lot of
but
times.
you think it's bad or good?
No, I'm enjoying. It's good.
Okay, it's good. So keep enjoying it. Why question it?
Okay.
Because Krishna is ever fresh. It's not like, it's not something material. It's something that's spiritual, and so it's ever fresh. A new experience, new pleasure, new everything, because Krishna is ever fresh. Navayovana. That's why you're feeling that way. Don't over intellectualize.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Behind you.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. When Krishna is in his own abode, Goloka Vrindavan, so he is in childhood form or youth form?
16.
Okay. So like when he comes to material world, so he is exhibiting different pastimes.
That's
so in
correct.
spiritual world also he is exhibiting
From
similar.
16.
Okay. So pastimes are going there also.
The bhava of the pastimes, but not the pastimes.
Okay.
For example, Mother Dasoda is feeling Krishna is my child, but there's no birth pastime. There's no Krishna crawling around the courtyard. There's no falling of the twin Arjun trees. There's no looking inside Krishna's mouth and seeing the universal form, and so forth. There's the mood, there's the bhava, but not the lila. So this is a very special place. When Krishna appears and performs his pastimes, it's specifically these childhood pastimes, the Vrindavan pastimes. It's why they're so celebrated and so lovely to hear, chant, and remember. Anything else? Yes, over here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So the trees, they are Shantarasa, right? But then seems like they are evolving from Shantarasa to Dasarasa.
You got it. Exactly.
Thank you.
Krishna's stimulating their love, to elevate their love to that stage. Online? Not yet? No.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So, um, Krishna appears in this material world once in a day of Brahma. That is what we discussed and know. But my understanding is that Krishna's childhood pastimes goes on continuously in one of the Brahmanda, any Brahmanda. So maybe this Brahmanda, Krishna may not come once in a Brahma.
That's
But-
correct.
That's correct?
That's right.
Okay. So
It's
next,
Nitya Leela.
Nitya Leela. Yeah.
The sun is always rising somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna is always taking birth somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah.
His pastimes are, in fact, eternal.
Yeah. And even our next life may not be in the same Brahmanda. It may go to different Brahmanda also. So may experience. I don't know.
Whatever Krishna wants, that's what we want.
Thank you.
I just wanted about the Brahmas. One day Krishna appears, so I was wondering like how Brahma commits the same illusory.
How Brahma what?
How Brahma commits the same mistake of.
It's different Brahmas. Within each universe, it's a different Brahma.
So when we say each day of Brahma is like each day is like a different Brahma.
Oh, that's what you mean. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
because in each day, like he performs the pastime of stealing the calves.
Well, they're variegated. There's themes, and they're variegated.
Right.
But yes, but not exactly because it's variegated. But yes, same mistake every day. With some variety. And and it's for Krishna's pleasure. Krishna enjoys. You could say, Arjuna gets bewildered every day of Brahma. Every time there's a Kurukshetra battle, he gets bewildered. And he gets bewildered every day? Like, come on. That's a lot of days to get bewildered every day. A big difference between Arjuna's bewilderment and Brahma's. Brahma lasts for the whole duration of the universe, and Arjuna comes and goes. But the bewilderment of Brahma is for our edification, not just simply, he's got a problem.
There's an online question by Sachi Sutta Prabhu. He's saying, why is Srimad Bhagavatam reading recommended to be read with devotees?
Why is Bhagavatam being recommended to?
Why are we recommended to read Srimad Bhagavatam with devotees?
With devotees, okay.
Yeah.
It's meant Katayantas shamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. The joy of Bhagavatam is increased by doing what we're doing right now. You can sit and you should sit and read in a private way, and to discuss in the association of devotees. It's even more relishable. So it's recommended because the sweetness is enhanced or enriched or expanded by that reading together or discussing together. It's meant to that this literature is meant to be discussed. It's not like you're doing something wrong if you don't read it in association. You just read on your own. But the joy is enhanced. Krishna likes when his devotees come together and discuss about him.
I think there's another question by Sanjari Mataji. So When you were speaking on the trees, why were the leaves considered lesser than the branches? Also,
Before you go on to the also, let me do that one.
okay.
Because it's a poetic expression of one of our acharyas to say flowers and fruits, that's even more glorious than leaves. So leaves, less glorious, flowers and fruits, more glorious. It's just a poetic expression. That's all. The leaves are glorious too.
And then the question related to that. So the leaves weren't envious of the branches. So how do we understand? How do we develop that skill of appreciating other services, big or small?
Well, how do we develop? We can follow Krishna's example because he's picking trees. Now, who goes, I mean, there are some people that really appreciate trees. On my phone, I have a little YouTube site that for maybe 15, 20 minutes each morning, I listen to Prabhupada chanting japa and chant with Prabhupada chanting japa. So every morning I just hit the button and we go to hearing Prabhupada chanting. So just this morning, there was another site, I didn't go there, a site saying, trees are our friends. So some people glorify trees, but we normally don't hear people glorifying trees. We glorify many things. I mean, anyway, the trees here, the first thing that Krishna is honoring, because there's so many, well here, he's honoring the deer and the this and the that, but he starts with the trees. It's not like because they're lower, he starts lower and then he goes up to the higher. He's just, they're abundant and they're devotional. As pointed out, even Brahma is saying, may I take birth as a tree, bush, or creeper, because they're glorious. I'll get purified if that were to happen. From his position of the topmost being. So, how can we? Her question is, how can we appreciate? Because here we have these exalted devotees. Brahma, the head of our sampradaya, saying higher than me is taking birth as a tree or bush or creeper in Vrindavan. They're more exalted than the head of our sampradaya. Supposing you were to have an opportunity to see or meet or have the encounter with Lord Brahma, shui. And he's saying, not me, but the trees. So we can appreciate by seeing how great souls appreciate. That's my point. And every living entity in Vrindavan is very exalted, and whatever their rasa, they're stimulated by Krishna's presence, and they become ecstatic. So that's such great fortune to be even a tree in Vrindavan. So that's an answer. Kripamoya, you have something you want to?
Yeah, so there are more questions. Sashi Rekha Mataji, she asks, is one kalpa 12 hours of Brahma or 24 hours of Brahma? Because Brahma sleeps for 12 hours.
That's correct. Well, not he sleeps for 12 hours, but there's night for 12 hours. The rising and the setting of the sun is day, and then the setting until the next sunrise is night. You're not sleeping all that time, but there's day and there's night.
Okay.
Does that answer the question? I'm not sure exactly what the question is.
So
A kalpa is a day, and then you multiply by 2, and that's day and night.
okay. Yeah, she was wondering if a day, a kalpa is like a whole day, 24 hours.
No, it's 12.
It's 12. Okay.
Yeah, because you multiply by 2, because it's night also. In other words, to do the math, there's one complete yuga cycle and there's a number, 4,320,000 solar years. And that's one yuga cycle. Times 1,000, you add 3 zeros. That's a day. And times 2 is his night. So kalpa is his day. 4 billion, 320 million, that's a day, times 2. That's 8,640,000,000. That's day and night.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay?
And then there is another question by Giridhar Votikota. So he is asking, is there any description in Srimad Bhagavatam about Parikshit Maharaj's wife and her liberation?
Nothing comes to mind. There may very well be something, but I don't even recall her name, what to speak of something further about her. Maybe the Bhagavatam on the Heavenly Planets has a whole story about her, but not in our Bhagavatam that I can recall. And that's it?
Yeah, those are all the online questions. I had a question.
Okay, cool.
It's not really related to today's class.
That's
but-
okay.
Yeah. So I was wondering, like, the material world is like basically meant to reform us, like a jail that we're supposed to reform. But one thing like suffering is like a necessity. Like if we do something wrong, then we get suffering. But I was wondering, like, why is it that sometimes it seems like something seem a bit unfair, like say like whatever we do in the material world is like by default it seems like it's trying to pull us down, even if we do something small, like say just eating or doing nothing, and we get like a bad karma and then suffering from that. Like anything we do, it seems like default.
It's cruel.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like if we do like a small thing, like say I was reading the description of like hell and all, and one of them is like if you even see like someone like a guest comes and you don't want them there, or you like glare at them or something, then in hell there's a place where like these birds will pluck out your eyes or something like that. So so I mean, I was reading that. So some of those stuff like seemed like not the equal amount of suffering you're getting. And then the other thing is, if it's meant for us to learn, then why don't we like remember why we are getting the suffering? You know, like if so that we won't do it again.
Okay, you just threw a few things at once.
Yeah.
The non-commensurate punishment for something that seems to be more modest violation. And then another is not remembering. There's different ways, and this not remembering part, there's different ways of answering that I've heard that make sense to me. Here's one answer. Supposing you remember, supposing you had, this connects, this wrong connects with this suffering, that wrong connects with that suffering, and the other wrong connects with the other suffering, and you know where the thread emanates from, and therefore you won't do it again. The tendency to do things wrong aren't taken away. The tendency is not taken away by knowing this is the particular suffering due to this particular wrong, so I won't do it again. It's not how it works. That is to say, ignorance is the cause. And there's different manifestations of ignorance, and there's different sufferings from those different manifestations of ignorance. But ignorance is the cause. So when one who's in ignorance, knowing this particular ignorance is the cause of this particular suffering, one doesn't stop it. Just take, a couple of simple examples. People, Prabhupada would say, and in America, there's this warning, Surgeon General's warning, if you smoke this cigarette, it'll kill you. And people smoke cigarettes, even they know it's going to kill them. So knowing that it's going to kill you some people doesn't stop. But if there's that mode of ignorance, then they'll find some other way to vent that mode of ignorance than smoking cigarettes, because that the particular mode of nature is prevalent. So knowing doesn't check the wrongdoing or the misbehavior. Now, then with that argument, then why is there even this description of this hell for this sin and that hell for that sin? And because people are going to be sinful anyway, so what does it matter? If you know that this is the reaction to, oh gosh, I don't want that one, so I better receive guests nicely. It's more, a reply to that is, not the only one, but the a reply to that is, we universally we don't like suffering. We like to be happy. So the principle, aside from the particular, the principle is anything other than. So we go up to dharmic life, and you go up to transcendental life. Anything other than transcendental life is another form of misery. That's what we just heard in chapter 10 of Uddhava Gita. Like a third of it was, and if people propose, it deals with karma kanda philosophy of Jaimini. Just do good karma, because then you'll enjoy. So it's a whole long explanation of why that's not really what enjoyment is. You do this and you get that heavenly planet, you do that, you get another heavenly planet. So it's not real. The lesson will not be learned. Just by knowing you do this, you get that enjoyment. You do the other thing, you get the other enjoyment. The lesson that it's the root cause of suffering has to be dealt with. So if I know what the cause is of my suffering, it doesn't take away my tendency to do the wrong thing. What takes away the tendency to do the wrong thing is transcendental knowledge of our relationship with Krishna, that, starting with we're not the body and so forth and so on. So the real thing is that transcendental knowledge. But some persons aren't ready for transcendental knowledge. And so they need to go through the school of hard knocks to learn, wait a minute, I need to change my program. Delete this software and put on some other software, because it's leading to suffering. I need another program. So the suffering is there for a reason. The warning that there is suffering is there for a reason. That description of hellish planets precedes Maharaj Parikshit wanting to know from Shukadev, what can be done to help people not having to go to that, if they do sinful things, knowingly or unknowingly, they have to experience that hellish condition. What can be done to relieve them of that suffering condition? Which is a classic question of all theology. Different theologies have different answers to that question. It's one of the things that differentiates different theologies. How to deal with sinful reactions. Sin and sinful reactions. Some people say this, some people say that. The answer the Bhagavatam gives is transcendental. You connect with the personality of Godhead, not just atonement and so on. Anyway, it's a fact there is suffering. At least on the mental plane, there's suffering. On the gross physical and subtle physical plane, there's suffering. So we don't like to suffer. But we don't know what real happiness is and how to achieve it. So it leads to, in stages, it leads to taking shelter of transcendence. You know what? I just complain a little bit. Not that you were complaining, but I'm going to complain a little bit. One of the things that really disturbed me growing up is what's called in the Bible Belt area is Bible thumping. If you don't accept Jesus, you're going to burn. It's screaming into a microphone at audiences that crowd around the guy who's up on a little podium and screaming at people. Fire and brimstone is called. You're going to burn in hell. You accept Jesus. So that's not very inviting. Doesn't mean that there isn't a hell, but the motivator. But some people are in the mode of ignorance, and that they don't want to burn in hell. And so it's true there is such a place. Now, that doesn't specifically address your question. Let's go back to your question. Sorry, I got distracted by one of my pet peeves. Commensurate. Well, what it says by there is such a hell is, although in our modern culture it's not a big deal, in Vedic culture it's a big deal. Receiving guests. In Vedic culture it's a big deal. In modern culture it's not. And people do all kinds of things in modern culture that have nothing to do with Vedic culture. It invites the next and the next and the next. Like, cruelty to animals or cruelty to nature. It's a doorway that beyond that doorway there's other doorways that just open. There are theologies that say all kinds of things, and then the behaviors of people who believe in those theologies it's not consistent with those behaviors. So there's doorways that lead to those degradations. I mean, how is it? Prabhupada would sometimes speak about it, but my contact with the world is limited because of my life as a sannyasi and the way that I keep my lifestyle. But when I go to programs and look and see what's out there, how many places are abundant sinful things? And they're all over the place. There's churches, and especially churches, and American flags, and but the eating places and the drinking places, and it's just that's where that doorway of not receiving guests nicely leads to. Just it doesn't really matter. It's a greater sin to take the life of an animal than to not receive a guest properly. But one leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next, and so there's culpability for that. Now your point, I agree with you. It's not commensurate. Taking the life of animal is not the same as not receiving a guest nicely. But one leads to the other. So there's a place for people who one leads to the next, leads to the next. That's my thought on that. Although by modern yardsticks, it doesn't equal. There's not a long description of the hellish planets. I mean, there's a chapter, and it ends saying there's not only these, whatever it is, 78, but there's thousands and millions, so many different, the indication is there's culpability for not observing Dharma. There's Dharma and there's Adharma. And taking part in Adharma has its culpability. Now, in my estimation as well as yours, or your estimation as well as mine, that's not the same as some of the other things that there's hellish existence for. Look at this. We have a hand up.
So why do we suffer in this material world?
I didn't get it. Why do we suffer in this material world? That's your question?
Yeah.
We don't like to suffer. So why do we suffer? That's your question. The simple answer is, maybe too simple, but we forgot Krishna. That's the answer. Do you mean to say, if you just remember Krishna, you won't suffer? Well, we've had it the answer to that one is, we've for a long time, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, we were forgetting Krishna and doing activities in ignorance of Krishna, and activities of ignorance bring suffering. So we're going to have to pay the price for our ignorance, and at least in this lifetime endure the temporary comings and goings of happiness and distress. But it's come because of forgetfulness of Krishna. Our whole material existence is precipitated or caused by forgetfulness of Krishna. The cure is remembrance of Krishna. So that's why, your mother is very keen to have you wear a shirt that's got Krishna's picture on it, and, have a Bhagavatam in your home and hear stories about Krishna. Do you hear stories about Krishna in the evening?
Yes.
So that's to help you get free from suffering. Because when you remember Krishna, you'll become free from suffering. Permanently, like never again, never again, never again. Never again having a material body, because the material body means there's going to be suffering. It's a permanent solution to suffering, remembering Krishna. And we have suffering because we forgot Krishna. Too simple, right?
Yes.
Just make sure you take Krishna Prasadam and not other things. And hear nice Krishna stories. Okay?
So there's a question by Lagopal Prabhu. He's asking that when we were talking about the plants and trees in the spiritual world, so when Krishna was talking to them, do we mean that they are the plants and trees, the consciousness? Are we referring to the consciousness
Yes.
in the plant and
Yes.
trees?
Yes.
Okay.
Because in the spiritual world, everything is conscious, and those that are fortunate enough to be even trees, plants, and creepers in Vrindavan, they're conscious of Krishna.
Yeah, so I think he's asking, like, is it like the spiritual body is... Okay, I'll just read it. Okay. The description about plants, trees, etc. in the spiritual world are the living entities with the consciousness in that plant and tree body. Is that what being applies
Yes.
when we hear
Yes.
such a description?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
They're not ordinary. Trees and plants, ordinary, they're not conscious like this. Trees and plants in Krishna's pastimes, their consciousness is very elevated. Now, how do we know that? We know that from Scripture. And Krishna's addressing them. He's appreciating their conscious offerings to him. It's different. Okay? Thank you very much, Prabhupada Ki. Okay. So I understand there's going to be a Bhagavatam set. What's planned? Who knows what's planned? Huh?
Gopal Prabhu is not here. Oh. So, Maharaj, just want to introduce you. This is Kushant, medical student, third year, studying in Washu, and his brother.
Your brothers.
Yeah, he's my younger brother.
Younger brother. Okay. You somehow got inspired to get Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes, Maharaj.
Very good. This is it, huh? This
That's
is first canto.
first. The big box was there. We couldn't able to carry it, so we just got first canto, and this is Bhagavad Gita flexi bound. It's a new version
Uh-huh.
also.
Smaller. I like the bigger one.
Yeah,
But
this for the to go kind of thing.
Pocket.
Pocket for the trap.
need a big spot. Anyway,
This is-
and for your brother too, right?
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
But you got to open the wrapper. And then
Bhagavatam.
Canto 1. But you'll get the other parts too, right?
Yeah. Everything is there.
Everything is there.
Yeah.
But it's heavy. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Medical school, huh?
Yeah, yes, Maharaj. Yes.
Long journey.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. What stage are you in?